Hello, everybody. It's Chad. Just wanted to talk today about taking MBTI test online. One of the biggest things that frustrates me about people taking these tests online and assuming that they're a type is the subjective information that they're getting from these types. So I can take the test 10 times and have 10 different results depending on how I interpret the questions at the time. So the best way to actually determine your MBTI type is to understand the cognitive functions, all 8 of them, in the best manner possible, and then find out which order you execute those functions. Okay, so this is an ENTJ trying to teach people how to logically order these cognitive functions. I can understand it's going to be hard for some people. I'm going to try to make this as easy as possible for you, but I'm going to start off by defining these tests and some of the issues that I have with them. One of them is a particular way of wording a question. If I'm in a bad mood, I may take that question a different way, or if I'm in a good mood, I may interpret that question. If I'm drunk, I may interpret that question differently. So I can tell you across the board, I've pretty much scored the same, but a lot of people, they're kind of unsure about things. And it's important that we understand our type, because then you understand what your weaknesses are, what you need to work on, and some developments. Okay, so I started off by understanding some past stuff and like crises that have happened in my life and what really affected me, and then I kind of branched out from that point. I think it's important to understand each one of these functions so you understand what's going on, and kind of using the past as a reference point. So I'm going to explain these in a nutshell, and then I'll probably make future videos explaining each one and the difference between the other opposite, like introverted intuition versus extroverted intuition, or introverted sensing versus extroverted sensing. Okay? So, example, a lot of ENTJs may think they're INTJs. And I used to think I was maybe an INTJ, but I realized with time that I'm not an INTJ for very specific reasons. One of them is the difference in kind of coordinating something. And ENTJ will mobilize reality or use reality first and then fulfill the vision. And INTJ will have the vision first and then use reality to fulfill that vision. So it's the order of things that is able to, for people to determine something. So I consider INTJs visionaries, masterminds, ultimate planners. They're able to coordinate on a different playing field than everybody else. They tend to spend a lot of time in their head. I'm going to jump subjects real quick, and I'm also going to talk about the I and the N and the T and the J. So the 4 different letters, okay? I or E doesn't mean you are an extroverted person, okay? A lot of ENTJs tend to be less, hey, nice to meet you kind of person, and more calm, reserved, collected people, but doesn't mean that they're introverted or INTJs. And I'll explain why, okay? So just because you're an I or an E, it doesn't mean, okay, I'm the only difference between an ENTJ and an INTJ is one's extroverted, one's introverted. That is not true, okay? That is the stupidest way to approach this MBTI testing. Okay, so please do not do that, because it's not right. Okay, they're cognitive orders. They have 4 levels. Okay, actually 8 levels, but we're going to just talk about the top 4. The 4 levels, okay? We're using these 2 because it's the most familiar to me, but I'm going to use different examples here in the future. But you have a primary function, you have a secondary function or auxiliary function, you have a tertiary function, and then you have an inferior function. So you have 4 that make up your temperament, okay? I'm not going to say personality, because and 2 INTJs could be totally different based on beliefs, okay? So jumping ship here, changing gears, we're going to talk a little more about the difference between personality and temperament, okay? Personality consists of 2 different sections. You have a predisposition and you have a disposition. Predisposition is what you're wired with, your hardware. Disposition is your software, what you're programmed with, your belief system. Like you may have an ENTJ that has a totally different religion, has a totally different belief system than you. That is disposition. Predisposition is they still have the same temperament. They still approach things the same way. Okay, so you have to understand that difference. It's not like there's only 16 types with MBTI, but it doesn't mean that 1/16 of the world is all the same, and then another 16th of the world is all the same. All INTPs are all the same. It's not true. Also, the types have nothing to do with your level of intelligence. Okay, if you're an NTJ, it doesn't mean you're any more intelligent than the next type. Your IQ could be low. If you are a ESFP or an ISFP, it doesn't mean you're any less intelligent than another type. It's insane to think that it has nothing to do with IQ. It's your temperament, how you approach things, how you understand things. So going back to that, understanding that order is really important. An ENTJ and an INTJ just doesn't mean one's introverted, one's extroverted. That is not true. Okay, so stop playing with the letters and start understanding the functions. Do not play with the letters. An INTJ has the dominant function of introverted intuition. That is the primary function. That's what they spend the most time in. It's the first function that's developed as a kid. So when they're young, they're going to spend most time in introverted intuition. It's kind of like a space cadet. Okay, and I say this not insulting. Okay, they tend to be distant. They tend to be very reserved, very calm, very collected, but very in their head. So they're not really with reality necessarily as kids. They kind of just feel like misfits. They use a lot of introverted intuition. They're able to put puzzles and pieces together. That's very much the introverted intuition side of that. An ENTJ is going to, as a kid, is developing their dominant function, which is extroverted thinking. Okay? Two totally separate things. It's not that one is using extroverted thinking and one that's using introverted thinking. Now, no. Okay? Dominant function. Introverted intuition, extroverted thinking. TE-NI. Okay? Totally different. All right, so when I was younger, I'm an ENTJ, obviously, so when I was younger, I spent most of my time creating order out of things. I would go through encyclopedias and order things and circle things and create patterns and start lining things up in particular orders, like the fastest animals, the most poisonous animals of the world. I'd create order out of all things. I would organize things on anything I could organize. I'd organize it. I'd have little boxes for everything. I'd just start creating this order. Okay? An INTJ, on the other hand, will spend more time putting things together in their mind. Say, you have piece A, piece B, piece C. Can I piece these together to create D? Okay? After time, you start seeing all these patterns and you're spending all this time in NI, it starts getting very developed. It becomes that dominant function. Then you have your secondary function. Your secondary function is going to be if you're an ENTJ, it's going to be your introverted intuition. So now you're going to go into what the INTJ already went through. And they're going to start going into extroverted thinking. So the INTJ now has this huge storehouse of patterns and relationships between different things and in their mind, and it's a single point. Okay, we're going to talk about introverted intuition in a different video, but it's a single focal point based on my internalization of whatever that particular object is. Okay, so my interpretation of that object and its function in the world and how I could use that object to accelerate my life or whatever I'm looking at doing in my particular goal if I'm an INTJ. Now I'm going to be able to use TE to start plotting. Okay, so I have these patterns, and if I'm an INTJ, I'm going to start creating order with these patterns. So I've already made the plan. I've planned, and it's perfect. Now there's order in the plan that I'm starting to lay out using TE to lay out the plan. But the plan is first. It's primary. It's everything. It's my compass. It's everything I have is in this plan. So I'm laying out this pattern, and I'm using TE. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. Okay? NI, TE. On the other hand, an ENTJ, okay, use TE. They create order. Okay? Order first. It's backed by NI. So they work together. It's not like one happens and the next happens. It's just what's more dominant in the sense, the order of things. So I'm going to start creating the vision before I even am aware of the vision in the sense of, INTJ, my intuition is doing this. So the INTJ is more than likely to have epiphanies, like boom, because they're always staying in introverted intuition. ENTJs have them too because they're very much introverted intuitives. But they are going to have the manifestation of the vision before they're actually going to fulfill the vision. The INTJs, to them, their vision is more real than, say, reality itself. Introverted intuition and extroverted sensing are opposite functions. So the more they stay in I, the SE is going to kind of minimize, be squashed by the power of the NI, so they can become very detached. On the other hand, ENTJs have a larger extroverted sensing function. That's their tertiary function. INTJs is their very inferior function, the extroverted sensing. So, hence ENTJs less likely to plan long range and more likely to go with the flow. Half a plan, let's go. I'm willing to face what comes up in reality. INTJs don't like things popping up in the middle of their plan, so they plan contingencies. If A happens, we'll go with B. If B happens, we'll go with C. If C happens, we'll go with D. They'll know everything. So they're the ultimate plot planners. ENTJs, on the other hand, are going to be more like, we got a good plan, let's execute. And if something comes up, we'll deal with it when it comes up. And that's that extroverted sensing. We're kind of used to things popping up real time, and we're ready to take them on. INTJs get very uncomfortable with things they didn't expect or foresee. So it's not a difference of one's extroverted and one's introverted. One is happy-go-lucky, talk to somebody, and the other person isn't. You can have ENTJs that had a bad past that don't like to talk to people. Maybe their character was altered, that disposition side was altered by a bad value system. Maybe they don't trust people. Okay, so the temperament, on the other hand, is always going to be the same. What do I do first? What is the order of things? Well, how do I create the structure out of this thing first, and then I'm going to fulfill that vision by already manifesting it in reality. So ENTJs tend to play with reality a lot more. INTJs play in their head, and then reality follows it. Okay, so ENTJs are like, okay, let's put this together, and then we're going to use that to make it work for something else. So ENTJs, INTJs, not extroverted versus introverted, okay? One is introverted intuition, one is extroverted thinking as their dominant functions. Auxiliary functions are flip-flopped, okay? So one's an INTJ here, one's ENTJ here, okay? They flip-flop. They're not like this. Hey, one's extroverted, one's introverted. They're just, boom, they're flip-flopped, okay? Tertiary functions. INTJ's tertiary function is introverted feeling. ENTJ's tertiary function is extroverted sensing. Okay, so this whole order creates a different temperament. INTJs and ENTJs are not a lot alike. They think alike. They have the same kind of functions, but it's pretty easy to tell the difference between the two. In my opinion, INTJs are a lot different because their order is different. Okay, ENTJs, extroverted sensing is a tertiary function. INTJs, extroverted sensing is the last function. It's the inferior function. An INTJ is going to be less likely to go crazy skydiving and scuba diving and hang gliding and putting their life on without a plan, okay? If an INTJ does that, he's going to have everything prepared. Like, he's going to have 6 parachutes. He's going to have some kind of jetpack loaded on his back just in case the wind picks up in his free fall, and he plans all this stuff out. And ENTJ is like, oh, well, hey, we're going to do it. See what happens. If something happens, I'll pull my reserve. If that happens, well, it looks like I'm dead. But you know what? Hey, I died with dignity. Okay, I'm ready to face it head on. Bring it on. INTJ, on the other hand, is not that the INTJs don't hate challenge. That's not what I'm saying. INTJs plan for everything first before they deal with it. They don't want to deal with it. They don't like things popping up. They already think about it. So INTJs, like I say, they just fly circles around everything to make sure they understand it all in their own way. Doesn't mean they're always right, but it does mean they tend to think every possibility and try to come up with the most contingencies for any scenario. So that's kind of understanding the order and the structure of 2 different personality types that have the same letters. So stop paying attention to the letters. It's ridiculous. I mean, yeah, you can have some fun and try to figure out your type online and say, oh, I'm a P or a J, or I judge instead of perceive. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, thinking and feeling are judging functions. Sensing and intuition are perception functions. It's kind of like they're almost mutually exclusive. Not exactly, but it's almost to that point. The more I use TE, the more my FI, I lose track of it, lose sight of it. I lost touch with my values because I've been using TE so much. What is really important to me? And that's kind of they're both judging functions. Do I judge based on value, or do I judge based on rationale? Do I judge based on logic or sequential or empirical data? Okay, so every type has not one thing better than the other, okay? So it doesn't mean that people with an F letter feel more than people with a, P or a J or a I or a N, or it doesn't matter, okay? Again, character and temperament, all right? Now, the way they show it's going to be a lot different. ENTJ is going to be a lot more reserved. They have that NI. NI is very laid back. If, for some reason, my brain would short circuit, but if I had extroverted thinking, an extroverted intuition, an extroverted sensing, an extroverted feeling, which wouldn't happen, but if I did, it would probably be a short circuit, okay? Extroverted, introverted, extroverted, introverted is the pattern of every MBTI type. And it's not judging, or perception. It's judging, perception, or perception, judging. It's staggered. It's not like 2 judging functions are dominant and then 2 perception functions. They're a symbiosis. One perceives and one has a judgment. You have to understand that whole picture to really get a good grip on what the difference is. So not going in and saying, oh, you're not an ENTJ, or you're not this, or you're not this, because you looked up at the sky, or you twitched to the left, or you twitched to the right, or some ridiculous, stupid philosophy that's on here, okay? People are going to be different. Some ENTJs have fear, okay? They have fear of certain things. You take an ENTJ who was abused in his past, he's not going to be this ultra-confident ENTJ. He still has the same temperament. He's still going to perceive things, or she, or whoever's still going to perceive things the way that they're going to perceive things. They're going to judge things in the way they judge things. So stop judging people and telling people what they are and aren't. I mean, I'm more than happy to make a guess. Hey, based on your personality, I would say you're this. Based on the way you do this, I'd say you're this. Do you spend more time in introverted feeling or extroverted feeling? Do you spend more time in dominant extroverted thinking or dominant introverted thinking? Okay, 2 totally separate functions. Okay, it's not like I don't have introverted thinking. It's just my default is extroverted thinking. Okay, so introverted thinking I use, but why? That's the question. Okay, so why do we do what we do? In introverted thinking, it's the means in itself. Okay, introverted thinking is my perception of that particular object, not perception, my judgment of that particular object and how it works. For example, this watch. If I'm using introverted thinking, I'm going to take a look at this watch, and I'm going to try to break this watch down to its very components and understand the components in themselves to maybe break them down into further components. In a sense, it's deductive reasoning. That ultimately makes the watch work. But I broke it down backward, okay? I don't operate in introverted intuition too much. Introverted thinking. Extroverted thinking, on the other hand, I'm going to say, I've got this watch. It does work. I don't really care how it works unless I need to know how it works to move forward, okay? So I really don't care how this watch works. An introverted an introverted thinker is known more as an analyst. Introverted thinking is more analysis for the means in itself. And ENTJ and INTJ, with extroverted thinking, tend to want to use that to attain whatever their end goal is. Anyway, sorry I made this long, but I hope that helps, and we'll see y'all in the next video. Thank you.